Welcome to Dad's Unfiltered. We're two old friends navigating our way through midlife and fatherhood, striving to flip the script about being a father as well as being a man, all with the goal of helping other men do the same.
Dad's Unfiltered.
Hey guys, welcome back to Dad's Unfiltered. This is season 2, episode. I didn't look. At 5? 5 or 6. You guys read it in the description. You'll figure it out.
We'll find out at the end. Yes.
So with me, as always, is my buddy Chris, all the way out in LA. We're recording this a little late in the day, so if Chris is a little slow at the moment, it's because he's hitting the wall.
It's true. It's we usually record it. My time is mid-afternoon when we record. Being in the, where am I? Am I in the past or the future? I'm in the past. That's right, because
For me,
3 hours ahead.
Well, for me,
Yeah, the past.
Either way, no, I don't know. No, you're in the future. I'm in the past.
Oh God,
it doesn't matter.
No, yeah. See, this is how bad at math we are.
It was a busy week this week.
Do you want to meet? You want to meet at 2 p.m. PST? What's PST? Pacific Standard Time. Oh, what time is that? My time. 3 hours difference. Which way? Fuck.
Yeah, well, that's the way it works.
Oh, dude, I get it wrong all the time. It's
It was
no big deal.
Whatever. So, as I was trying to say, but you keep talking about time.
I do keep talking about time.
It was a busy week this week for everybody. I had my son's moving on ceremony. So he graduated from 8th grade and going into the high school. So now I'm a parent of 2 high schoolers, one that constantly ticks me off and the other one that gives me a reason to smile. So it works out pretty good.
Yeah, there's a good juxtaposition.
It was fun because you know Zach and how he doesn't like to sit still or doesn't care if you're talking because he's just going to fucking talk over you.
He does that.
So during the whole ceremony, he had caught me and his mom. He caught like in his eye. So the whole ceremony, he kept saying, "Mama, mama, mama," like the whole fucking
like out
time.
loud to the auditorium, right?
The kid next to him. Oh yeah, the whole time. And then I was leaving, and because of my knee, I have to take the elevator. So there was an older lady in her walker waiting for the elevator with me.
Mm.
And she's like, "Oh, did you have a kid graduating?" And I'm like, "Yes, I did." She goes, "Oh, which one?" And I'm like the one that kept saying "mama" the whole time. "Oh, what a little angel." And, you know, it's true. He is the little angel, but it's so funny. And it was a nice way to be able to say, yeah, that's my kid.
Yeah.
The one that wouldn't shut up the whole time.
Well, it's an easy descriptor for sure.
Yeah, and now he's away. His mother opted to take him on a road trip. She drove down to freaking Maryland for some meetup for he's got Durka syndrome. So they're doing a meetup in Maryland, the most boring state in the nation. And
I thought that was Delaware.
They're there for the weekend. So the neighbors, they're pretty similar, you know. Driving through them, you don't notice which is which. So there's that.
Well, we apologize to all the people from both states.
I don't apologize. I do like your crab cakes, Maryland.
Oh, see? There it is. There's something.
I like your crab cakes. Crab cakes. Crab cakes and Old Bay. Thank you, Maryland, for that shit.
Oh, yeah, that's some good shit.
But what about you? Your week was busy. You had doctor's appointments for kids.
Yeah, man.
Did you have, this is your first week with your wife going back to work, too?
Full time, for sure. She dabbled a little bit last week. And, you know, and honestly, that was a big thing, was she wanted to have more maternal leave to connect with her brand new daughter. And I totally agree. It's just, as the emails and the calls pile up.
This is the first full week where you're adjusting to that.
Tough. Yeah, for sure. So, you know, and it's kind of when it rains, it pours. It was just one of those weeks where so much showed up. We had doctor's appointments, like follow-ups for my infant daughter. We had a couple for my 5-year-old because of some challenges there. Nothing life threatening, just little checkups. It just kind of all fell in the same week. So my wife had some follow-ups too. So it was basically like daughter 1, daughter 2, wife, daughter 1, daughter 2, wife. So appointments all week. The U.S. healthcare system being what it is just crazy. So it was stressful to say the least. And obviously having it be a follow-up to the anniversary of my sister. So that it's been a heavy couple weeks for sure.
Yeah. I get that. So this week, as we just said, schedules were hectic. So we ended up having a guest this week. Now, this time around, there's a couple reasons why I'm not in most of this episode. One being the scheduling conflict that we said. The other being is it's a more sensitive subject. I have trouble facing issues pertaining to mortality. Being a bigger guy and seeing the way things work for bigger fellows, like I'm gonna totally Kevin Smith this one, but like when that guy had a heart attack for some reason, that was like a little bit of a shakeup for me because I've always kind of idolized him. So not like I wanted to get fat and have a beard and hang out at convenience stores or anything.
Right.
The fat thing just kind of happened on its own. But it definitely was more of a wake up, and then the issues with my dad that he was having.
Yeah.
So mortality is definitely kind of a hot button subject for me. I don't really like to talk about it because I get weepy. Not like I don't care about crying in front of all you motherfuckers at all. I just sometimes I don't like the way it feels. Like sometimes it's a good feeling, but sometimes you get like that blubbering bullshit, and I don't want you to see me like this, that kind of thing. And that's basically how I get.
And I know we talked about this before too. Just you and I, not on the podcast, but yeah, that's the thing. Like, that's another reason I wanted to have the conversation too, was to share for the people that have a challenge having talks like this, and to feel like it can be okay. And I'm not knocking the way anyone feels and what they're comfortable with or not. But I think because this subject matter tends not to be talked about all that much, it makes a huge swath of people very uncomfortable. And I honestly think it's big of you to admit it and acknowledge that that's just a point for you where you're not ready to hit yet. So we all have them.
Fuck no, man. I don't want to die. I get too much shit on my plate right now. Not to mention, what really is the killer for me is Zachary. Like,
yeah,
I think about what happens. I know what's going to happen to me. I'm either going to end up a pile of ash or in a fucking hole in the ground. What concerns me the most is Zachary. And then when I start thinking about my mortality, I think about what's going to happen with him. Because right now, my older son is like Charlie fucking Babbitt from Rain Man. All he gets is the car, but all he wants is the fucking money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I mean, I love both of my children, but really, I was hoping for more from Cameron at this point with his brother.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping one day that the light will dawn upon Marblehead and he'll rise to the occasion. But right now, it's a big concern.
Yeah.
So that's really another reason why I don't like dealing with it.
No, and I can understand that. It's certainly
it's a big fucking spiral for me. To be honest, I spiral out and then when I'm sobbing.
Well, and honestly,
weed, crying.
hopefully it is. If we're going with the analogy to full fruition, hopefully it is a Charlie Babbitt situation where he may be where he is now, but after a while they'll connect and he'll actually make that connection for himself. And
after his brother almost burns the house down with a toaster oven.
However it needs to happen, I suppose. He freaks out at the airport that they're going to go on a plane because he doesn't want to fly any airline because they all crashed. No, I know, but that's why they went on the road trip.
Except for Qantas.
Qantas never crashed. Of course, it has now, but back then it didn't. Yeah. But yeah. So hopefully that'll happen with your kids. Hopefully.
Yeah. Well, we can hope. So anyway, this week is a different format. Chris takes the reins on this interview,
Mm-hmm.
and this is with our good friend, uh,
Brad Nelson,
Debt Free Dad,
the debt-free dad.
Brad Nelson,
Yep.
and it's definitely a good interview. I hope you guys stick around, listen to the whole thing, and I think at this point we're gonna just skip right into that.
Well, I did want to say just quick, it does get heavy at points, but we have some laughs and just, I like to throw out a trigger warning because everyone has their things that bother them. And this is not to say that, protect you from anything. It's simply to say, this is what we're going to be talking about. So if this is an issue for you, maybe skip this one. But I really hope you don't, because it was a really good conversation. Brad's a really great guy. He's going through a lot with what he just experienced. And it was really good to connect with him about this topic, given the fact that my sister died 4 years ago, obviously from suicide. And Brad talks about his experience with that, and I'll let him be the one to share that. So we obviously talk about suicide in this interview. So there you go.
I also would like to throw this out there that we'll probably have Brad back maybe for something a little bit more lighthearted.
Oh, we absolutely
in
will.
the future.
Yep, and we did talk about that as well. He wants to come back for sure.
A lot of his stuff is fantastic. His ways of managing your budget and stuff. His tips are great, and it's unfortunate to see that he has to deal with this sort of thing right now in his life. But he definitely has our support over here at Dad's Unfiltered for sure.
Absolutely.
And, any of you guys, you can always reach out to either one of us. I might, be full of bullshit a lot of the time, but I definitely, I can listen. That's for sure.
For sure. And that's why we're here. That's why we're having these conversations, to make it okay for all of you to have these conversations and to support you in that. So without further ado,
here's the episode.
And I do want to put out a trigger warning here, because we're going to be talking about grief. We're going to be talking about suicide, and our personal experiences with some pretty heavy issues. And I thought that this would be especially appropriate because this past about a week and a half was the 4-year anniversary of my sister, losing my sister to suicide. And it got me thinking about, we do our best to have a good time and have good conversations here, and we talk about real stuff, but we also talk about a lot of lighthearted stuff. And that's not to say that we can't talk about serious things and be lighthearted, but it felt appropriate to dig into this episode for me. And I wanted to invite Brad to discuss things as well, for a reason that I would happily let him share. But it seems that it hit me especially hard this year. It's been 4 years. I'm a new dad. I have a lot going on right now, and it just landed differently. So I want to take some time to talk about it, and I thought it'd be appropriate to talk with Brad about it as well.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Chris. I wish it was. I would say I wish. It's a. But yeah, I like to talk about the lighthearted stuff a lot better.
Yeah, goddamn right.
No
Hopefully,
question,
you can still have a few laughs here to lighten the mood.
Yeah,
and keep it from being so damn depressing. Yeah, please.
Yeah. But I'm glad you asked me to be on, because I've been, for those listening, I lost my wife a little over 3.5 months ago to suicide. And so I'm just learning how to navigate a whole new life right now. And so when Chris told me and asked me to be on the show, I was like, I've been wanting to talk more about this and trying to figure out, and maybe it's wrong of me even this early to even try to figure out how to organize my thoughts in a way that I could even talk about it. And I just told him, I'm like, maybe I just need to start talking about it. I don't think there's ever going to be an organized approach to navigating grief, excuse me, and emotion and the trauma that me and my kids have been going through, and even the trauma that my wife went through prior to this even happening. And so I'm glad to be here, and to be, admittedly, I told Chris this is gonna be a little raw. I mean, I think it's things that I'm kind of figuring out as we go here, and I thought it would just be good, honestly, probably more therapeutic for me, just to kind of air out some things and just have a good discussion about it. And so I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. And thank you. And I really, really appreciate you being willing to do that in a public forum, because having the conversation is one thing, but having it where so many others can hear it is something else. So, and to that point, it's another reason why I wanted to invite you and also talk about it myself, was just the whole reason we're doing this is to have conversations about life that will potentially help other men and fathers. And I know,
yeah, absolutely,
death, grief, sadness is such a challenging subject for men, especially, not because we're incapable, but just because it's not our habit. It's not something we're encouraged to do most of the time. And when we're told that we need to create our own spaces for this, but don't know how, it makes it that much more difficult, especially when we run into other men who tend to belittle or avoid or, shame us for having these experiences. This is fucking life, fellas.
Yeah.
This is what happens. So we need to be able to discuss it. We need to be able to learn tools and skills that can help us get through things. And that's, I think, the ultimate irony is the desire to put out this strong front, and then thinking that if you need help with that, it makes you weak, which just kills me. Because in what other area of your life does using tools to better what you're doing make you weak? That's all it is. It's just a different iteration of that same, process. I cannot do this. I can't hammer a nail in with my fist. I need a hammer. That doesn't make me weak. It makes me smart. It makes me, the type of man that I want to be, because I am figuring out my problems by utilizing things that may not necessarily be within me. And in doing so, I improve those things within me. And this is the first step, is just, and you mentioned something, Brad, you mentioned that having a plan. And I thought that was such a good acknowledgement. You can't always have a plan. And a straightforward example of that is emotion itself. It's amazingly rare that you can plan to have an emotion, right? I mean, yeah, if you purposely put yourself in an emotional situation, knowing something will happen, sure. But when you feel an emotion come up, it's not like, oh, well, check that off for today. We'll go to the next one. It happens when it happens.
Right.
So
yeah.
What's your
and that's
experience
grief,
with
man.
that?
That's grief
Oh,
right
dude.
now. I mean, that is grief. I mean, you don't, I find it, I've made a commitment not to make plans right now, because I have no idea how I'm going to feel with anything right now.
Yeah.
And I think we got to talk a little bit about that planning, talking about the show. I was kind of glad you were like, no, we're just going to do it like tomorrow. I'm like, okay, I can do that. I can commit to tomorrow. I can commit to that. Right. I just don't know if I can commit to like next week or 2 weeks or a month from now, because I don't know where I'm going to be, and that's kind of how I'm approaching this, is that, I learned a lot when I had my daughter. When my daughter was born, she was born with HIE, hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy. She was diagnosed with cerebral palsy. She's doing very, very well. So most people would never even know. Yeah, I mean, most people, I mean, she really was given not much of a life that she was going to live when she was first born. After 4 days, they pretty much told us, like, be prepared for a very challenging life for her.
Yeah.
And that hasn't been her case at all. She's a miracle. Like, she literally is, most people would never even know, outside of a speech delay that she's experiencing right now and that we're working through, that there's anything wrong with her. But I learned something in that experience, in that when she was born and they were telling us all these things, I immediately started thinking about, well, what is 5 years? What is going to look like when she's 5 years old and she's got to start kindergarten? What is it going to look like when she's a teenager? What's it going to look like when she's supposed to go to a dance and she's in a wheelchair? Is anyone ever going to ask her? What, is she ever going to get married?
Yeah.
And it was just like, your mind just races to like all of these unknowns.
Yeah.
And I was driving myself crazy. And I eventually just said, okay, we can't control any of those things that are going to be 15 years from now, 5 years from now, whatever. But what I can control is what I do today and what we work on with her right now today. And I have treated my wife's passing very much the same way. And that there are times when my mind races to these unknowns of where is my life going to be. You know, I'm a very goal driven person. I run my own business. I thrive on reaching goals, taking action, and being proactive. And that's just the way I go about my life. And right now is the weirdest time of my life because I can't live that way. Because right now I'm just focusing on day-to-day living, you know. And so I don't have any goals because, you know, that's the hard part. My wife was also an entrepreneur. She ran her own business, very successful. And we both lived our life that way. And we both had goals, both had things that we wanted to achieve, what our life was going to look like years from now. And that's literally all gone. And I have to start over completely. And I don't even know how to do that yet, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's like, I'm just working on every day and not worried so much about tomorrow or next week, even though there are times where I do. And I'm like, I think about my daughter, you know, and now she doesn't have a mom.
Yeah.
And what's that going to mean when she's a teenager and she needs a mom, you know? And then, you know, but I go back and it's like, why? We've already done this, Brad. You've done it with Avery. Like we can't live life that way. We have to focus on what we can control today. And we just have to work on today. And we're going to build this tiny little staircase every single day. And we're going to build eventually a new life. And sadly, that's going to be without my wife. And that breaks my heart.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I know we have to go on. And as hard as that is, and sometimes it's a very overwhelming feeling to the point where it's hard to even get going some days. But we'll get there. And the key is just focusing on some of the positive things that I can do every single day, even if those things are just minuscule. It's still a win right now based on where I'm at.
Yeah. I very much hear that. And to expand on what you just said there about when you just can't get going, is it that what's the point mentality, right? Because and correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Yeah. And excuse me. It's interesting that you said that needing to focus on those little things that you can control. And that's, you know, I've been preaching that, and granted, I don't do it amazingly well yet myself. That's the point. I'm trying to work on this as I'm helping others with it. But that whole thing of getting stuck in the future thought versus being completely in the present and recognizing what you can control and what you can't control and doing your best to let go of what you can't control. And I think that is very important, but also just as important. But again, these things are appropriate in different times. And I think one of the appropriate times for looking to that future is allowing yourself to have those moments and not giving yourself shit for it, basically shaming yourself for doing. Now, if you're doing it constantly and you're not living your present life, that's something else. But it's not an either or, you know, one thing or the other type thing. You have to allow for those experiences too, because that's part of the grief, right? Is just letting yourself feel a certain way about the potential of an experience that may not be happening yet. But then recognizing that is the case, that there is nothing you can do about it right now, and coming back to the present and having those little wins like you talked about, because that is something you can control.
Yeah. 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 And that's something I made a choice. I mean, a conscious choice in this process is that I am going to feel every bit of this. I cannot push a gas pedal and the accelerator down and speed through this process because it's not going to do me any good. If I like, man, Chris, I mean, let's talk, I mean, men stuff, right?
Sure.
I haven't cried more in my life than I have in the last probably 8 to 9 months, and it's
I
like
hear that.
so surface ready now. It was just so weird. I'm not a sad person. I'm not a depressed person. I've never been in my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
But and I don't consider myself depressed now. I consider myself to be very sad.
Absolutely.
But I don't consider myself to be depressed. I'm very sad about what I'm dealing with, what my kids are dealing with, but it's so weird to me to have like crying be right there almost all the time. Like I can do it almost instantly.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas opposed to before any of this happened, it took an immense amount to get me to that point.
Yeah.
And I just I've chosen, like, when those feelings come up, like, I'm not going to try to bury them. I'm not going to try to run from it. I'm not going to try to hide from it. I'm not going to try to cover these tears up in front of my kids. I'm not going to um and don't get me wrong, I've made some mistakes and let emotion get the best of me with
Sure.
some things, but I'm human and I have to forgive myself for those and just understand that that's going to be part of the process. But at the same time, I want, and some people want to run, they want to abuse alcohol or drugs or anything. I don't want that. I literally want to feel it all, because if I don't, I feel like it's just going to make it that much harder and be that much more of an extended period than it has to be.
Yeah.
So I'm almost welcoming it, and I don't know, it's really helped me just by telling myself, like, Brad, this is really gonna suck for a long time. It's just really gonna suck.
Yeah.
And but it's not gonna suck forever. I'll always be sad for Sarah. I'm actually Billy Bob Thornton. I saw a TikTok that Billy Bob Thornton did. He's talking about his brother, and he's like, every time I think about my brother, there's sadness. And he's like, I don't look at that sadness as a bad thing. I look at that sadness as me honoring a person that had a deep impact on my life.
That's
and
fantastic.
that's the same way I'm always going to think about. That's the same way I'm always going to think about my wife. Yes, I don't always want it to be sadness, because Sarah and I lived an 11 incredible years together. We went after life like nobody else. Like, we had everything that we ever wanted and we worked for it. Like, we just went after it.
That's
and
awesome,
so there's so
man.
much stuff to celebrate in those last 11 years. And I don't want these last, 8 or 9 months when things got really bad to define either, number one, her, and number two, what our relationship and what our family was. And so I that's been hard for me, because I'm heartbroken for her. There are things that she went through that she should never have had to go through. There are experiences that she had that she should have never experienced, that had nothing to do with me. It was prior to us even meeting. There are just shit things that she had to go through, and that, it breaks my heart that had to happen. And so I think over time that will separate, and the memories will fill more of that area, and the things that we used to do, and being able to think more about the positive things. But being that this is so fresh, 3.5 months, it's like, I mean, I've been through a battle that I don't wish on anybody.
Absolutely.
So,
and I remember.
So, anyways, I mean, I think that's just helped me, is just to understand that it's going to be shitty for a long time, and that's going to be okay. It's just it's honoring her that it's going to be this shitty, because she was just that big of a person for me.
Yeah.
And it's just going to be part of the process and moving forward. So.
Absolutely. And on a few things that you said, again, going back to the man stuff that we're so used to being cliche and the social norm a lot of the time, it's so ironic to me that you hit the nail on the head with everything that you just said with regard to, just allowing it to be there. And in fact, not just allowing it, but moving toward it, not trying to hide from it or avoid it or change it. Because the process may in fact take longer and be more challenging if you do that. And it just immediately took me to so many examples of just, again, other iterations of what we as men go through. Like, no one expects to run through the gym and do, okay, next set. All right, I did my whole 90-minute workout in 10 minutes. I'm good. That's not how it works. And it's the same with emotion. Right. So again, it does not make you weak for succumbing to this experience. It shows your strength for stepping into it. because the whole reason you want to avoid it, in my experience, is two main reasons: the internal fear and the external judgment. And, you know, that obviously
Sure. Oh
many,
man, that judgment thing is for real. Oof.
oh, dude, I
You know,
one
you
of my,
start talking about things like suicide, you know.
oh, absolutely. Well, forget about the judgment of your experience of it, but the actual experience itself gets, you know, there's so many
Right.
different, again, excuse me, so many different, especially from different religions, you know, the different belief systems about someone doing that. And there's just so much to deal with as someone grieving for a loss in that way. And it actually reminds me of a really great, it's probably my favorite current advertisement and probably my top 5 ever, just for potency and humor and benefit. And it's BetterHelp. It's that therapy app. And it's a guy I don't know if you've seen this yet. It's a guy doing a bench press, and he's probably got 3 plates on both sides, you know, and he's hanging there, and it's on his chest, and he's like emotionless, just, and this guy doing flies like across from him is like kind of looks behind him and goes over there. He's like, "Dude, you okay? Do you need a hand?" And he starts to lift it up. He's like, "No, I'll handle it." It was like, there is no shame in asking for help. And he's like, "You don't know my family. You don't know my siblings, my cousins, my parents. I'm just," he's like, "Man, this is really heavy. You should really just let me help you lift it up." He's like, "No, I'll figure it out, man. You're good." And the guy just slowly kind of walks away from the bench with this dude getting crushed by a giant amount of weight. And and then the tagline is, "Sometimes you need to ask for help." That is such a great acknowledgement of taking out the perception of that experience to another version of it to see how ridiculous that response is. And
Right.
so much, and tell me if I'm wrong, but this is true for me. So much of my challenge with dealing with grief and going through the emotions that I have since my sister died has a big chunk of it is just getting over that stuff, getting like almost through a cloud of judgment and resistance before I even get to dealing with the emotion. Have you experienced that?
Yeah, a little bit. You know, obviously, you know, when it comes to, you know, suicide, the worry was initially, you know, is there going to be judgment that we completely missed it, you know, or was there judgment that, you know, we didn't do enough to help, or was there going to be judgment against her?
Yeah.
And what ended up happening? And then was there going to be judgment on how I handle it? Oh, he's too happy. Oh, he's too sad now. Like, you know, because I run an online business. I'm online. You know, I post on my Facebook page, and I took a good long break for a while because I didn't know. I was so, and I'm someone who doesn't give a shit what people think. And I am. I really don't. And I learned that getting out of debt is that in order to separate yourself from the herd of people living paycheck to paycheck, you got to stop giving a shit what other people are doing with their money, because most of them are broke.
Yeah.
And so I eventually learned, like, I gotta stop caring what other people think and what other people are doing. But it really bothered me to get back to work because I was worried, and I don't know why, but it's just, I guess it's just human side of us that I was worried that people are going to be like, well, that was quick. He's over it. Or he looks like he's well past it, or he's not sad enough, or he's not, you know, he looks really happy. Should he be that happy? Like, if something ever happens to me, you better not be as happy as Brad is. Right. That was some of the stuff that I was worried about. And it's like, well, because what you see on social media is honestly, it's a, you know, it's a highlight reel. I'm not shit. I'm not, you know, posting reels of me crying my eyes out 1 o'clock in the morning because I'm missing my wife. Do you want me to? I will. I mean, but people don't want to see that shit, you know?
Yeah.
You know, because that's the reality. I'm
then
taking
then
little
you'd be criticized for doing
I'm
that.
having to
right?
put on a. Oh, of course, right. You're going to be judged, and I told myself that very early on too, Brad. You're going to be judged no matter what the fuck you do. So just do it.
Yeah.
And fuck them. Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
That's the attitude I had to go in with it.
Yeah.
You know, and I needed to ask myself, what would Sarah do in my situation if the roles were reversed? And that is how I'm going about moving forward with this, because I don't feel Sarah would have done anything differently than I'm doing right now. And I've just made a decision that, we're going to get back to work. We're going to do our best to get back to the lives that we were living. And, I'm just going to start taking action, and I think, but that I had to get through a lot of that judgment thing. And honestly, I've just gotten to the point now where it's like, and honestly, and I do have to give props to so many people. Like, there has been very little judgment or people saying things or rumors getting back to me about things. Like, our friends and family have been so supportive, and
That's great.
for me, that's been a huge help. So if and I'm planning on posting this and sharing it with my audience. And so even my Roots members, people are in my business. I mean, we've had such an outpouring of support, because I think there is, and we can hopefully talk about this too, Chris, maybe in your situation, but I think in this day and age in 2023, yes, is there a lot of misinformation about suicide? Yes. But I also think there's a hell of a lot more information about mental health and suicide now than there was, say, 20, 30 years ago.
Absolutely.
And I think
even 5 years ago,
that has shown, that has so shown with not only the nurses that took care of her while she was in the hospital. I mean, their support, their concern, their feelings of they see this all the time and it needs to stop.
Yeah.
And then down to friends and family, and them being supportive of me and our kids and our family and showing up. And there are some that haven't shown up at all, which I expect, because death is weird and it does weird things to people. And I get that.
Yeah.
But I will say, I think I don't want to say the judgment side was on them, because it was 100% on me that I was feeling that way.
Oh yeah.
Because nobody has come out and made me feel that way. It was me putting the pressure on myself.
100%. And that's where I was coming from too. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the voices. It's still not my voice.
Yeah.
It's someone else's voice, but it's in my head. Someone isn't actively doing that to me.
Right.
Right. But that's where it comes from. And I think we have these potent moments, and I always basically call them Star Wars moments, right? Where something happens that is so potent in your life that there's a before and after, because it will never be what it was before. And regardless of all of your experience in life, you are forced to do almost everything differently. And
oh my gosh,
to have that level, like even down to your thought process, right? You're trying. It's like, you got the plane on autopilot, and you're in there, you're like trying to turn the wheel, or life is turning the wheel on you, and you're like, I want to go back to, and you just can't. After a while, you just have to stop, because you're gonna give yourself a freaking aneurysm trying to control that. And to recognize, as you were saying, the little wins during the day and focusing on the day, and then allowing that process to happen and move through it. Similar to sticking with the plane analogy, it's like going through a storm, right? The fastest way through, or the fastest way around, is through. Right? I love that comparison between cows and buffalo. You familiar? You know this one? Where if there's a storm on the plane, cows will run away from the storm, but then the storm will catch up with them, and they're in it longer. Buffalo see a storm and they run toward it, because they know they'll be on the other side of it more quickly. So going back to your comment about your experience and just running toward the storm, not because you have a death wish or not because you're beating your chest, but because that's going to be the best benefit for you, regardless of the potency of the storm when you hit it. And that whole before and after thing, I think it's just like anything, positive or negative. Like, again, going back to the Star Wars analogy, people thought of the world differently before Star Wars and after Star Wars. It just did, because it was part of the zeitgeist, right? And in my life, there's before my sister died and after my sister died. It is the most potent, life-changing experience in my own life. I cannot speak to any of my family members' experiences. I don't know how they categorize it. I just share with them and do my best to maintain those relationships in the different way that they are now. And really having to, it's not judge it against, it's more just reflect against new experiences. And I know you're only 3 months in with this experience, and I obviously am not having your experience, but I know what I was like 3 months in, and everything was potent. Like there isn't. It's like, I don't know if you've ever had appendicitis. I got my appendix out when I was 20 years old, and it was one of those where it didn't matter what position I was in. I was like, it still hurt. Like I'm trying to move. Like, you know, when you're in pain and you just want it to stop and give yourself a break.
Right.
It just, you try and all this stuff and nothing changes it. It's still just right here. And like, yep. I craved sleep even when I wasn't tired, to just not have to think about it, you know? And even now, like being a new father, because my sister died when my daughter was almost 1, and she's 4 now, or almost 5 now. And now with my new daughter here, I wonder what she would have thought of my new daughter. I wonder, you know, thinking about the enjoyment of handing my new daughter to my sister, and because she was a baby magnet always, you know, she was in a room and there was a baby there, she'd find her way to it, and she had that kind of baby whisperer aspect to her, you know. Well, baby's crying, give her to Katie, you know, and then just plop her. She was my sister was a heavy set woman, and she had a good solid baby bosom on her, so she just propped that kid right here, and the kid would just go oh man, and she loved it. And just picturing that with my new daughter, and how much just the look on her face when she first sees her, and you know, and there's that kind of bittersweet experience in that visualization, the sadness of it never happening, but the joy of the wonder about it, you know. And 4 years later, I'm still doing that. I'm still looking at my new experiences saying, I wonder what my sister would have done, or wonder what she would have said or thought, what our conversations about it would be like, you know. And as I said to you before we started recording, so often you don't have the perspective on something until it changes. And it can either be better or worse. It doesn't have to be better or worse. It just has to change. And if it's worse, you say, holy shit, it wasn't that bad before. And if it's better, you say, wow, that was really bad. You know, so it's, to me, it felt very much like a tidal wave of that in the beginning that slowly crested, and, you know, now I'm kind of in I'm washing to shore aspect of it. It's still there. It's just not nearly as potent as this tidal wave was.
Yeah. I'm certainly, you know, I mean, my kids just finished school. I mean, there's all the end of school programs and concerts, and you know, my daughter's only 4, and you know, not having my wife there it's been hard, you know, and I think it'll always be hard. So yeah, I mean, 3.5 months in, I mean, there's certainly some things that she should be here. You know, she should be here experiencing this, and you know, that's the other hard part. You know, being a single parent now, I'm starting to learn what that's all about, and it's like you said, everything changed overnight. Not even overnight, in an instant, it changed.
Yeah.
My whole life, my responsibilities, what I'm up against. I mean, everything. And so, yeah, I mean, it just goes back to that day by day thing, you know, and That's the only way that I can figure out how to keep getting through it, you know, and but I mean, I take comfort in that, you know, I think I'm doing all the things that Sarah would want me to do. You know, you talk about mental health, you know, the week after the funeral, a friend I'd always been, when I started my own business 7 years ago, I went full time. I no longer had an excuse to say I don't have time to work out because I controlled my own schedule. All right. It's like, okay, I can't keep using this bullshit excuse to stay out of shape and overweight.
Yeah.
Like, I got to start
And then
working
you're like,
out.
"Oh,
Right.
son of a bitch, I can't
And
use
so-
that excuse anymore."
Right. I'm my own boss. I can make this decision now. Right. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Sarah and I committed, like, we're going to work out. We're going to work out 5 days a week. And we started doing, you know, Les Mills Body Pump and all their programs at our local YMCA and stuff. And we've done very well for that for the last, you know, 6.5 years. And then this past year when my wife got sick, I kind of really fell off because I was taking care of her and trying to get that whole situation figured out. And so, like, a week after my wife's funeral, actually, I think it was that week right after, one of my high school friends had just said, you know, hey, I graduated high school in 98, so I'm 43. So she,
As am I.
we got connected at the funeral, and yeah. So she's like, you know, you need to come to this this Burn Boot Camp. Now, Burn Boot Camp's a franchise. They're all over. I think they have like 180 locations across the United States. They're not everywhere. I think 30 some states they're in. And I was like, okay. I was like, it sounds good. And I decided something in me. I didn't want to do anything. Like after that, I was so tired and just exhausted, mentally, physically, just wiped out. I just didn't want to do anything. But for some reason, something got me to go into this place and sign up. Right? I don't know what, but something did. And so I went, and we talk about taking day by day, and it was taking that just one action that I feel has been so good for my mental health over these last 3.5 months, that little action and that little progress and success has turned into other progress and successes in other areas of my life. Because
That's great.
It's created momentum in a positive direction. And I teach all this stuff. This is what I do for a living. You know, I help people change their their whole entire financial mindset. And it's all about taking little steps. Like, you can't change your entire financial life in one day. It's not going to happen. We're going to do it little bit by little bit every single day. And I think going through the grieving process, losing a spouse, becoming a single parent, learning how to navigate that life. How do you get your kids through grief? How do you have those tough conversations with your kid? Not only that their mom isn't here, but in the manner that she isn't here, and talking about suicide, and and you do it a little bit every single day by taking small little pieces of action every single day. And I think going to that place has been a really great place for me just to let it freaking go. I mean, boot camp is like, if you've never done it before, it is freaking intense. And it's high fives, it's interacting with other people, it's positive, it's loud freaking music all the time. And I freaking hate going because it's painful, right? But I think today I completed my like 62nd or 63rd camp now in the last 3.5 months.
God damn, dude. Congrats, man. That's no easy feat either.
It's
when you're not grieving.
Thanks, man. And I feel, right. And so I think that's been a big part of this for me, is that that has just been so good. And I can't even like really pinpoint why, because I'm tired the rest of the day after that workout. Like, my body is aching. I'm sore all the time. But yet something from a mental health standpoint has really helped me have just an overall better attitude towards a lot of the things that I'm dealing with. Now, I'm not saying I'm perfect, because there's days I'm plenty crabby and plenty not happy and plenty angry. But and I'm not saying it's all sunshine and roses around my house, but I can say that if I hadn't done anything, let's say I decided to hide instead, like, I'm just gonna hide. I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to see anybody. I'm gonna be bitter. I feel like if I would have stayed in that type of a mentality, even for these last 3.5 months, I feel like if I decided to get started today, it would have been that much harder to get started, because you're creating now almost negative momentum in your life, by being bitter and letting that, letting those feelings kind of overcome you and dictate how you're going to go about your day. And even though it's easy to do, I could have easily decided, and I still can, just say, oh, I'm going to let it win today. I'm just going to lay around and watch TV or just sleep, or, but I haven't. I've consciously made a decision even when I haven't felt like it, is like, no, we gotta go. We gotta get up. We gotta do this. And honestly, a big part of that is for my kids. You know, I don't have a choice.
Yeah.
I don't. And I feel
Yeah.
like if you've ever seen that picture of the, you know, the parent covering their kids or their family with the arrows in the back, you know, and that's kind of how I feel, you know, right now. And I'm very wounded, very, very hurt, and very just sad, and a lot of stuff going on. But at the same time, my kids have saved me more than I could have ever done for them, because they've given me a reason to get up and to get moving, get them to school. We're going to keep our routine. We're going to keep getting groceries. We're going to keep cooking food. We're going to keep trying to do things. And if I wouldn't have had them, I really feel like, I don't know that I would be exactly where I'm at from a mental health standpoint. I think I'd probably be far, far much worse. And my kids have just given me that purpose. Like, hey, I got to be there for them, you know, and I got to figure this out, because how I handle this and how I move through this is going to show them how they can. It's going to give them permission on how they can handle it and deal with it. And I don't want to show them that in a negative way. I want to, and again, I have in some cases. Like, there's been times I've gotten on my son's case, and I'm like, I stop myself. I'm like, and I cry, and I look at him, and I said, I'm sorry. This is not you. This was me. And I'm just really sad today. And I took it out on you, and that was wrong. And I give him a hug.
That's
and
huge,
I say, you know
man.
what, I'm going to fix it. We'll figure it out, you know? And it's so, but man, I can't say enough about my kids. They just, yeah, they've saved me a lot through this, and they will continue to. And it's been an honor to be their dad, for sure.
That's awesome, man. And there it is. That's a great acknowledgement too, to be aware of that for yourself. And that's family, man. That's the essence of family, right? To, without even trying, to be there for each other in that way. And I totally understand that purposeful drive with regard to your kids. Even just as a side note, like, never mind for my mental health, but for my physical health, you know, realizing I have a 2-month-old, and I'm the most out of shape I've ever been in my life, you know, and yeah, I had an excuse for a while with the pandemic and being a stay-at-home dad, losing my business. Like, I had stuff, but
yeah,
you know, it's not, again, like you said, it's not the excuse, and I'm not doing it for me anymore. Yes, I'm doing it for me, but not only for me. And that is another motivator and a driver. And that's the benefit of that kind of dadhood-esqueness about heavy emotion. You know, it's like those additional handholds or, you know, light markers. Like, it forces you to do things differently that you wouldn't do if you were by yourself. And I think, first of all, the emotion aspect of things. And this is what, you know, I preach in my hero training, the ability to catch yourself in an emotional moment and then make a choice to respond to it instead of just simply reacting to it. Like, that's the foundational goal of so much of what I talk about. And I don't catch myself all the time. I take that back. I catch myself all the time. I don't stop myself all the time. Like you said, even if you're aware of it, you know, even if you're aware of it and you lose it. But that's the thing, is it's always the response. Always. You yell at your kid. How do you respond to what you did? So it's not just responding to a situation. It's responding to your own reaction. It's responding to the current situation combined with the previous situations that are jamming in your head, telling you how to react to this one, right? So the ability to have that emotional moment, to not succeed at appropriately dealing with it, then to follow it up with a remedying type of action, that still counts. You know, and how you were saying, you got to get up and move. You got to do stuff. Yes, absolutely. But it's also okay to have those shit days where you don't get out of bed. Granted, especially as a single parent.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to have those days anyway. But
yeah, I'm wondering when those days are gonna come.
but even like honestly, even having that in your head, right? Being in that space, even if you're physically doing stuff, but you just checked out emotionally and mentally, that's okay for a day or two. Like I was talking about, I was using sleep to escape my emotions for a little while. It's not that I wasn't dealing with them, but just like I was talking about the appendix, like when you can't get in a comfortable position and let go of something for a little while, it's like that drop torture. Like having a drop of water hit your head is no big deal, but when it's there for 5 hours straight and you can't move, that's a whole different ball game. So having these, giving yourself the grace when you don't, hit the mark, while constantly striving to hit the mark. And isn't that life, right? It's just much more potent when you're in grief.
Right.
And to that point, I wanted to ask you if you have any specific things, because we talked about hero training before. Like, that's my thing. That is how I regulate myself, catch myself, and do my best to respond appropriately, even when I react badly. That's my system. That's my regimen. So is there other exercises or tools or specific things that you use in those circumstances?
Not necessarily. It's just I guess just allowing myself to be aware of where I'm at. But I can't say that I have a definitive process, because there are times, where I'm just like you, where I do lose it with, and let's remove from this statement the grief and the sadness that I'm experiencing, and let's just talk about being a dad,
Sure.
because there is that time too. Like, I just went through this with my son. He's home for summer break right now, and obviously, he's got shit all over his room. His room's he's not picking up after himself, and I'm like trying to tell him, it's like, dude, all right, I work from home. This is where I like, and now you're here all the time, and you're like mingling in my area. You got ramen noodle dust all over. There's ramen noodle package over there. I was like, and I just, after I do the gentle parenting and we're going to clean up after. So, but after like the fourth or fifth time, it's like, what in the shit, dude? Right? This is enough of this, right?
Absolutely.
And so there's times like that where it's like, you lose it, and it's like, okay, how many times can I ask nicely? But it's like, oh, to hell with it. It's not working, so I'm just going to let loose now, right?
Well, yeah, and that's the hardest part.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's the hardest part, I think, in general, with anything, is because what you're fighting against in the parenting situation, as you said, regardless of the grief or the sadness, is you're not dealing with someone who doesn't care. You're dealing with someone who has an underdeveloped brain, right? So you're fighting, you're fighting incomplete biology. So there's this assumption that they're doing it on purpose just to be a dick, right? And you got to put them in their place. And that's the traditional narrative, right? And you have every right as their parent to call them an idiot. And how have you not figured this out yet? You should be doing better. The classic, better statement, right? And I am not saying that there aren't times for that, engagement. Like, yeah, sometimes there just needs to be a wake-up call. Like, okay, you're clearly not getting this. Right. But there's a difference between just mindlessly yelling at the wall type technique. Like, you got to change it up. You got to and I think that's something that as a father, I have had to learn in action, because I know it cognitively. But it's the same thing as anything else. If it's not an ingrained habit, when you have that experience, anything that's not ingrained habit goes right out the window, and you're immediately to programming, right? That's what emotion does to you.
Right.
So when they're emotional and then you become emotional, you're not doing anything. You're just emotioning at each other. Right? So to be able to, and I just had this conversation with somebody else the other day. In fact, it was my sister-in-law. We were talking about parenting. I just thought of it. And the idea that when something happens, the assumption is, well, let's deal with the thing. when we deal with the thing, the emotion will take care of itself. And it's backwards. You should always deal with the emotion first, even though the assumption is, well, the thing is causing the emotion, so that's the symptom. We just deal with the cause and we're fine. But unfortunately, that's not how emotions work, right? So being able to acknowledge not only their experience, but yours, and how you just said, and this is why I asked about tools, because you're not calling them tools or techniques or whatever, but you're utilizing them. The fact that you said, you caught yourself, you said, hey, listen, I'm having this emotion right now. I did something that you didn't initiate. That was from me. I'm letting you know, regardless of how able you are to absorb what I'm saying. I'm assuming you did it in an age-appropriate way. To be able to acknowledge that and then move away from the situation until the emotion resolves enough to address it logically. And it's easy to say, not easy to do in the moment, especially when you have additional tidal waves of grief and sadness on top of whatever's happening. So it's that ability, again, ironically enough, approaching emotion in an emotionless way, where you can say, like a dog, right? You can literally, because I've done this, not on purpose, obviously, but like I've literally kicked my dog in the face when we still had dogs. That was another loss. The past couple of years, we lost 2 dogs. But I have literally kicked my dog in the face, and they have the whole, and then their eye, and then their face contorts until whatever happened goes away, and then they're just all over again, right? It's just whatever's happening in the moment is just gone. But we as human beings, we perpetuate our emotional states for a myriad of reasons, right? And you touched on this before with regard to feeling guilty about either crying too much or being too happy, or what's someone going to say. And, where's the standard? Who's setting that standard? And why do I need to follow it, right? I'm having the experience I'm having. It is what it is. As long as I'm not sitting on my ass feeling sorry for myself all day, every day, this is just part of the process, right? So I think being able to give yourself that leeway and recognize that a big reason you're carrying on this experience is, and that's the ultimate irony, if you did it dog-wise, right? If you just looked at the emotion as an experience you're currently having, that is a reaction to something that your mind and body's programming experienced, your body has that reaction, your mind sends the signals to your body gets filled with whatever hormones and chemicals, you have that emotional experience. If you just allow it and go through it, let it happen when it happens. Obviously, there are times that it's inappropriate to have certain emotional reactions. It doesn't mean you just never have it. It means you acknowledge, okay, it's not the time for this. I'm going to do it over here.
Right.
And so often we do that in the moment, but then we never actually let it happen later. And that's dealing with it, right? You're not dealing with it like a prisoner in the basement. All right, I kicked him back down the stairs. I heard the chain hit the floor. We're fine. Like, that's not how you deal with your emotions, right? It's a friend who's having a rough time, and you invite them in for coffee or a drink, and you sit there and you let them have their experience, and then you let them leave. And if you allow your emotions in that way, they're not going to stick around as much. You're going to get a more potent experience, positive or negative, but it's there for a reason.
No question.
And just as you said, like you were talking before about getting that stuff out in the gym when you go and do these workouts or wherever you're doing them. And I don't know what it is. I'm exhausted after, but it feels so good to do it. Right. It's a release. It's the same. It's just on the opposite end of the spectrum as crying. It's the same thing, just done in a different way. You are releasing your emotion. It just happens to be more societally appropriate for men if they're doing it in a yang sort of way, an aggressive, anger-driven, assertive. If you're doing it that way, that's okay. But if you're doing it in a very yin,
Right.
just let it go, let it be way, it's the same fucking thing, right? It's
Yeah.
just done in a different way. That's it. So I think if we can let go of how we do it and just allow it to happen as it happens, you can still have those traditionally masculine experiences and feel good about getting it out in that aggressive way. That feels fucking awesome sometimes. But then
Right.
not giving
Right.
yourself shame, guilt, and shit for when it comes out the other way.
Right. Right. Yeah, I've never really been that way, I don't think. I've never, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I guess I've always been pretty comfortable with, feeling sad or not like trying to hide some of that stuff. Maybe
Oh, that's
that's
really
why
great,
I've been
actually.
dealing with this type of sadness, um, in a lot better way than say maybe other people do. Because again, I feel like I've always been pretty good and connected to my emotions and understanding what I'm feeling and recognizing it and taking the time just to feel it. And um, yeah, I've never really been one to hide, I don't think, from any of that kind of stuff. I've always been, and I've also been pretty outspoken. I'm not really, obviously I don't talk to everybody about some of this stuff, but I got some close friends that I've been keeping really good touch with. And that's been really, really
Well, that's
good and
good.
helpful and being able to just kind of express, what I'm feeling and how I'm feeling. And, um, so, those things have been really good. One thing I've been struggling with though, Chris, is, this whole question of what are you doing for yourself? And,
Mm.
and it's like, as
Mm-hmm.
someone who has, obviously I'm going to the gym, so that's one thing I'm doing for
Yep.
myself. But
Sure.
like there's been so many people have said, you got to take care of you now. You gotta focus on you. You gotta make sure you're doing stuff for yourself. And it's like I'm having a hard time understanding what that even is for me. And my love language is acts of service. So I love serving. It's
Yeah.
what I do in my business. It's crazy. That's
Yeah.
why I have a business like I do. And I love it so much. I just love serving other people. I love helping other people. I love, and I've served my wife and helped her with her business and helped, I was never the one like I have to babysit the kids. Like I like being a dad. I
Yeah.
like being with my kids. I like spending time with them. I like helping them, um, doing whatever it is that they need to do. And so like I don't have I'm and that's gonna be something I have to figure out. That's gonna be part of this journey is figuring out what am I gonna do for myself, right? Because I camp, like
Yeah.
I like to go camping. That was Sarah and I's thing, though. It wasn't just my thing. That was something we did together as a couple at first, and then we started doing it as a family. And
Yeah.
so it was never completely my thing, you know. I
Yep.
like Lego, but I don't get to do that much. But I know it's
Yeah.
just a weird.
Yeah.
It's been a question that I've been just struggling with. It's like, what are you doing for yourself? And it's like, I don't know, right? I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Well, and if you're open to it, I can share, because I would never assume to say this is what you should do, but I can say this is what I have landed on with what I should do. Um, and even just sharing the idea as a possibility, because who knows, it may click. Um, I think that I know why this happens to me. I don't know if this is a man thing, a father thing, or just a person thing, but uh, that whole, again, going back to extremes, it's either all or nothing. It's this or that. It's black and white, and I have had to remind myself, and this is something that came from massage school, because I think I talked about this, but I've been a massage therapist for over 13 years. And being in massage school was one of the best mental health places I have been in my entire life, because I
Wow.
meditated and got body work almost daily for close to a year. Um, and even just the education, the anatomy, physiology, traditional Chinese medicine, understanding, how elements affect the organs of the body, like just all of that. And the biggest reminder I've had to give myself is with regard to what you just said, how many times can I say that? With regard, to how do I take care of myself? And I think I get stuck in this still, and I still have to remind myself. It's that all or nothing. Well, if I don't go to the gym for an hour a day, 5 days a week, what's the point? Right.
Right.
I could for 5 minutes I could do curls in my living room. That's something. That's okay to just let it be that, right? And it's the same with doing things for you. Like, you don't have to go camping in the mountains to do something for yourself. You can, and I think you should. That's fucking awesome. I love camping. But sometimes it is taking, we talk about microdosing, right? Microdosing with psychedelics is therapeutic. But if you do a lot of it, it's recreational, right? Microdose with moments of silence, microdose with meditation, microdose with no technology. Just shut your phone and TV and tablet and laptop off and just sit there. You can set a timer if you want to, but take some breaths. You don't even have to meditate. This morning, I woke up with my daughter about 7:30. My wife had just been up with her. She said, "Hey, can you take her? I want to sleep a little more." Yeah, fine. Go downstairs. And I'm sitting on the couch. She's still sleeping. I was like, what should I be doing? Should I read? Should I write? Should I meditate? Should I do something for me? Or should I pop the TV on and just mindlessly sit there? And almost like on cue, my daughter woke up and was just like, as infants do. And I'm staring at her, and I just had this moment of, why not just spend some time with my daughter? And you're like, well, what the fuck can she do? She's an infant. She's not going to do anything. She's just going to mindlessly look around. Yeah, but I can still be in the presence of that and focus on that and allow that to be a moment and have a conversation with her. She will never remember or understand. But what I ended up doing is something that I've done for a while for my 5-year-old now, is I take out my phone and I turn on the memo notes recording and I just talk to her. And I talk to her current self as well as her future self, because I'm going to email them to her and just let her have the account when she's 18. And so it's something to focus on, right? And today was the first recording I made for my second daughter. And I just described what I was doing and what we were doing together. And I talked to her directly and asked her if she had anything to say to her older self, little stuff like that. And before I even got to that, I just had this moment of presence and just watching my daughter's facial expressions as she's learning how to be in a body, that is doing stuff for me. So reminding yourself that it doesn't have to be this huge thing. You can still have micro moments.
So if I went and bought a Jeep Wrangler, that's a big thing, kind of, right?
I'm not saying you can't do that stuff. I'm just saying,
but I did go do that.
Okay.
But here's the thing.
That's awesome.
Here's why I did it. It was for what you just described. And I didn't really realize it until as you were just kind of walking through what you were talking about. But I'm driving these kids all over the place. Like I told you before we started recording today, my daughter is, some special needs and stuff. And she goes to 4 therapy appointments a week, plus other appointments in school. And my kids, my older son's in school. And I'm going to soccer practice, so it's like, I'm driving these kids all over the place. And I've always wanted a Wrangler. I've had 2 of them in the past before my kids were born. And, Sarah and I always talked about getting another one. And so I saw this one, and it's like, I thought about it for a month before I did anything. Cause I was like, I teach this stuff. Like, I'm waiting. I'm not letting emotion, decide what I'm going to do. So I waited a month.
Nicely done.
I waited a month and it still kept showing up. I was like, fine, we're going to buy this thing.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, man, it has been super fun to have. And it's for like what you just said. It's like when I go pick up my daughter from school, or I pick her up, or I pick up my son, and I got some alone time for 15 or 20 minutes, and I can get in there, listen to some music, take the top off, and just chill out for a little bit. It's been so good to have something like that, just to have something fun just to do. Like you said, you sleep for a break. That to me feels like a break. Like I can just stop thinking about things and just roll down the windows and just breathe for a little bit. It's been good.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And yeah, see, and there's
And I'm not even a car person. I'm not even a car person. I drive piece of shit cars most of the time. So this thing's pretty badass.
well, but that's the thing. And that's awesome too. But it's not even about the car. It's why you buy anything materialistic, right? It is about the feeling that it gives you. And if
Right.
you can get something that it's not just superficial and or external and look at me, admiration. It is an internal beneficial enjoyment that something triggers in you, because it doesn't cause it, you cause it, but that's the catalyst, right? And if you can have something like that, big or small, potent or subtle, it is helping you do whatever you're doing and getting through whatever you're getting through. And those are still taking moments to do things for you, and that's great. That's a great one, man, for sure.
Yeah, I'm loving it.
So I would say, dude, honestly, I really enjoyed talking to you. I could talk to you all day, but I think we're gonna have to wind it down here. We're already been on for over an hour. If there's anything else that you wanted to share before we finalize everything, just have at it.
No, I think I'm good. Hopefully I can come back and, further down the road. And I like I said, my goal is, not only to talk about this more, just to talk about the subject of suicide and honestly, the journey that I went through with my wife and the journey she went through. I think, as I begin to heal and as I get to a better place where I can start talking, because I think it's going to serve a lot of people pretty well. I really do, and help.
I agree.
Because I've never been through anything like this in my entire life. Never known anyone who's gone through it. So what I've learned throughout this process, I think could be really helpful to other people and other families that might be experiencing it. And to hopefully give them some insight and maybe even just a little hope that, they're not alone, because I felt very, very alone. Even working with the mental health, caretakers and the support teams that are out there is still a very lonely process. And so I don't know what that looks like yet. That's some of the things that I'm going to have to figure out as I keep going kind of down this road and figuring how that fits into everything I do already. So.
Absolutely. And I very much hear you. Literally the foundational reason that got me into the emotion coaching that I'm doing is my sister's suicide. That was the major catalyst for me to dig into this stuff for myself and realize how many other men and fathers could use what I was discovering. And that's the genesis of this podcast. It is to have these conversations, make them more normal, and just get out of the fog of all the bullshit so we can get to the actual issue that will allow you to live a better life and a more potent life in all areas, So I really want to thank you for opening up and coming on and having this conversation. And as I said, I could do it all day, and I would more than love to have you on again. And we'll see what that will look like in the future. But for now, just to put a button on it with regard to all of your stuff, is it debtfreedad.com?
Yeah, actually it's you can go to therealdebtfreedad.com. You can also search the Debt Free Dad podcast on all podcast platforms. We're all over the place: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of them. And we've got over 170 plus episodes that are out there. And we're kind of talking a little bit about some of this stuff and how this fits into finances. And but if you're a dad out there, got a family, living paycheck to paycheck, and just tired of that kind of way of life, that's what we do here at Debt Free Dad, helping people get out of that lifestyle. And love to have you come listen.
Fantastic. Well, dads, we're heading to finalize the episode with a follow-up conversation with Pete and I. So again, Brad, thank you so much for being here, and we'll definitely talk to you again in the future.
Sounds good. Thanks, Chris.
All right, brother.
If you or someone you know is thinking about suicide, call or text the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 988.